Hello, I'm Siwan Rhys from the London Contemporary School of Piano. I'm here to give you a little introduction to extended techniques on the piano. So the reason extended techniques are important, I think, is because they are a way of expanding our idea of what the piano actually is and what it can do. So this is actually a massive piece of furniture, but most of us are only involved in this tiny bit here on the keyboard, but actually all of this makes the sound, and actually most of this bit we don't have anything to do with at all. So extended techniques can bring us into it, and it can really get us involved with how the instrument actually works and how the sounds are actually produced and what potential there is for other sounds as well. Another reason they're good to think about is if you create your own sounds, if you're a composer or a producer or an improviser, these techniques can really expand your palette of sounds and colours. So they're really worth exploring, looking into. So before we touch any strings or play any keys, it's worth remembering that the piano is basically just a massive resonance box. So once I put the pedal down and these dampers come up, anything can make these strings vibrate. So even my voice now is I can hear the strings are reacting already, and the louder I speak, the more they'll move. Or if a male, like a really low man's voice, really gets the low strings moving. Whistling also works. And maybe you could try that on your own piano. Just put the pedal down and go for it. There are some composers who've written pieces where they aim, for example, the clarinet plays into the piano whilst the pedal is down, and that really gets everything moving, vibrating. Then there's also, you can hit parts of the piano with the pedal down, and that'll really get the strings moving. So for example, so that's quite a cool sound. And that's just not even touching the strings at all. They're just vibrating because I've made them move. So now that we're actually looking at the strings, you can start to play the piano like a harp, basically. So plucking, you can use the fleshy part of your finger that gives you like a harp sound. You can also explore with your nail that gives a harder sound. You could probably also explore with like a guitar plectrum or any kind of things. I've also used pencils to scrape the strings, so just try stuff out. Here's some nail sounds. It's also just strumming across strings as well, like this. So that was using the back of my nails, but you could also use your fingers. That's quite cool. And you also probably saw me hitting these strings at the beginning. This is a really cool effect. So that's the strings plucking the strings. You can also damp the strings. Damping or muting is what we call just really kind of muffling the sound slightly. So what I'm going to do here is touch the strings I want to play right at this closest part, so near what we call the end pins, and then play the key, the corresponding key. So here's a normal note, and then here is some, I'm just pressing quite strongly, and the stronger you press, the more muted it'll be. That's without pedal. Here's some pedal now. So that's the muting. I've brought a little bag of things with me. So now we're moving on to preparation. So this is all parts of extended technique. So preparing is specifically where you actually put things either between the strings or onto the strings. So here I've got a bag of ping pong balls. Now this area of piano exploration is really very new, so you should explore with any kind of materials, really. But this is just really the tip of the iceberg. So here are ping pong balls. So if we put them on the string, they will react to the strings underneath them vibrating and make a sort of buzzing sound. They jump around quite a lot, and it's quite unpredictable, but it sounds quite cool. Here's the bottom register. So there we are, ping pong balls are going all over the place. So that's ping pong balls. In here I've also got an ebow, which any of you who play guitar might be familiar with. This is something you'll get in your music shop or online, quite easy to buy. It's just, I think it works with electromagnets. So I'm going to turn it on, and what this does is it makes the string vibrate without me even having to do anything. So I lift the pedal so that the dampers are up. And this creates a sort of ghostly sound that kind of comes out of nowhere. So that's a really beautiful sound. It only really works in this register of the piano. The bottom strings are too big and the top ones are too tight, but this is a good area to explore with an ebow. So, some other things I've got here. So quickly, I've got some blue tack, which is a very trendy way at the moment amongst composers to damp sound, a bit like the muting I showed you earlier with my fingers. So you can just place it close to the end pins, press it down quite hard. You need quite a thick layer of blue tack. So here's the sound of the blue tack compared to normal sound. You could place a long strip over a whole section of the piano or just on specific notes that you want to slightly change the sound of. I've also got this giant paperclip which I can put between strings. Be careful not to scratch the wooden soundboard underneath these strings, so make sure it's not any object you place on the strings or between the strings doesn't scratch that. So here is the sound, the normal sound, and here's the paperclip. Kind of rattly, very non-piano sound. And we've got a screw. So this screw I've dipped in a sort of rubber thing so that if it does go low down inside the piano, it won't scratch the soundboard. So here I'm going to put it between some strings. So important to remember is to lift the dampers, so put the pedal down so that the little felt things between under the dampers don't get caught in the strings if you move the strings around, so because it's quite fragile there. So make sure these are up before you do anything. And then you can place the screw between the strings and it'll be held there by the strings. So here's a normal sound. And here's the screw. And you can change the sound slightly by moving the objects up and down the strings. So a bit closer to the damper, you've got a slightly different sound. A bit lower down. So that's the screw. And I've also in here got a chain, which I got in a hardware shop. You could get smaller ones or bigger ones, and they would give you different sounds. So here's the chain sound. So it's just rattling on the strings. And as you can hear, just the actual action of putting the chain on the strings gives you quite a cool sound as well, especially when the pedal is down. So anything, you should just try lots of things. And the last little technique I'm going to show you is playing harmonics. So harmonics is basically finding specific places on the string you can touch, and it'll give you a different sound and a different pitch to the one that striking the key would give you. So there are some here, let me just find it. So here are the normal pitches. And then these harmonics, what I'm doing is just lightly touching the string in the right place, and these are going to sound now an octave higher than they would normally sound. There it is. So it's quite sort of ghostly sound. It's very pure sounding, I always think, compared to the normal sound, or even the corresponding note on the piano. Because there's that attack sound, whereas here you get it less. Then on the lower strings there are masses and masses of harmonics, which you should just try and explore and try and find them, but here are a couple. You just move your finger slightly up and down the string and you'll get a different set of pitches. And then if I move this side of the dampers, the harmonics become very rich, but also very close together, so maybe use your nail instead, just to locate them more precisely. harmonics for you. So I hope that you've been inspired a little bit and got some new ideas from these different sounds. I think they can really expand, like I said, expand the palette of colours, and it adds a new richness to the instrument. Obviously the repertoire for the keyboard is vastly rich, but this is completely new, and it's only really recently been explored by composers. So if you're interested in listening to music written for this kind of thing, look up composers like Henry Cowell, George Crumb. They were the pioneers, really, Americans. And then more recent composers, there's Lachenmann in Germany, and in the UK we have Rolf Hind, who have all really extensively explored extended techniques for the instrument. So I hope you have a nice time exploring. Thank you very much.